Mercedes-AMG Interview Lounge.
Well, okay, so we'll take it. Give or take several million, around 10 million people listening to our show, and we do appreciate it. We don't know why, but we're glad you do listen. We don't know why you listen to this crap, but I will tell you this. In times we've been going through of late, having all the prayer power that you have sent our way to Froggy, and of course the team of incredible people who saved his life, and also people who are working with Uncle Johnny right now, saving his life, we thank you. So the power of numbers, we've definitely seen a payoff. We've definitely seen a payoff here. And one of the people you were praying for was this gentleman who's with us today, Dr. Brian Ho, neurosurgeon of University of Florida Health. He was right there, ground zero in Froggy's head, digging around, found a brain, but also found some very troubling, menacing aneurysm material going on in there. Good morning, Dr. Brian Ho. Thanks for coming on our show today.
Thank you for having me.
I know you could be saving more lives right now, and you've of course put them all on hold, and I'm kind of questioning you about that. But Froggy, before we get started with Dr. Ho, is there anything you want to say about him and to him right here in front of all of us?
I've thanked him so many times, and Dr. Ho, I can't thank you enough. It's such a cliche and sometimes overly used saying, but you absolutely saved my life. And I'm so thankful to you and your team and the University of Florida that I'm still here, because I know that as we have spoken and talked and learned more as we got in there and saw the aneurysm and that it had a daughter sac, it's a possibility I wouldn't still be sitting here right now. And thanks to you, I am. And I can't say thank you enough, and the words thank you aren't enough. I wish there was more I could do for you. And I know that there are many, many people that feel the same way I do, because I've had people reach out to me who have had procedures that you have done on their family members, and they feel the same way. And so thank you for saving my life and allowing me to continue on.
Well, thank you for saying that. And really, that's what all this is about. That's why I went to all those years of school and training and have dedicated my life and career to this. There's nothing more rewarding than hearing that sentiment and those words from patients like you and from families. It really means the world to me.
Hey, Dr. Ho, going back to your schooling, of course, Stanford, and I'm sure you have a whole list of campuses that wouldn't even let us drive across the campus. What was it that led you toward neurosurgery? I mean, was it just going through medical school and you decided to show up on brain day and it seemed exciting for you? Or like, what was it that fascinated you with this particular direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was two things. One was in my first year of medical school, we had a neuroscience course and a neuroanatomy course, and that was my favorite course in medical school, and I just loved it and loved neuroscience and neuroanatomy. And then the second thing, and I think this has been true throughout my training and in my career, is that I had role models or mentors that I really looked up to. And I met a few mentors very early on in medical school that I just really looked up to, and I felt I really wanted to be just like them. I wanted to follow in their footsteps. And I found that over and over again throughout my career, I've followed that same theme. I look up to people and I visualize myself as following their footsteps and being just like them.
I must assume that with each and every procedure, including Froggy's, there is an opportunity for you to learn more. I mean, the research continues through the work you do. Is there anything in particular you learned from Froggy's procedure that comes to mind, just thinking back on that day?
Yeah, I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying to learn every time I take care of a patient or every time I perform surgery. And then Froggy is probably mentioned to you. I also do research. So not only am I a surgeon, but I am also doing research in a laboratory. And so I take things that I encounter every day in my patients and questions that come up and try to take them back to the laboratory and try to understand what happens and why those things occur. And so, as you know, in his case, he had an aneurysm that we felt was an elective unruptured aneurysm that needed treatment at some point, not an emergency. And then at the time of surgery, we found that the aneurysm had an aneurysm on the aneurysm, or something that we call a daughter sac, which then is very concerning. It is a signal to us that this aneurysm is at high risk for rupturing at some point soon. And that's something that we didn't see on his imaging. And so after that, it made me think, what is it that causes these daughter sacs or these daughter aneurysms to form? And what is it that causes aneurysms that we think may not be so high risk for the time being, become high risk or go on to grow or rupture?
And I want to get into that because this is something everyone should be thinking about for themselves and their family members and their friends. And I want to hop into that and see just as if you can check your own breast for lumps, how can you check your brain for aneurysms? You can't put your fingers in there. I want to ask you about that in just a moment. Gandhi, did you have a question for Dr. Ho?
Yeah, it was really on exactly that, what you're talking about. At what point does the normal, I have a headache every now and then, turn into, this is something I really need to worry about, let me go to a doctor?
That is a great question. That's the $1 million question that no one really knows the answer to. The only way to know whether you have a brain aneurysm or not is to undergo imaging. And there's non-invasive ways to undergo brain imaging, MRI, a sequence of MRI called MR angiography, or CT scan, a sequence of CT scan called CT angiography. But it's not very practical to perform MRI, CTs, MRAs, CTAs on everybody that has a headache. Headaches are so common. The most common reason for patients to show up to an emergency department is headache, and you can't really perform these scans on everyone. And so that's one of those burning questions that we're trying to answer with research, with aneurysm research, is how can we identify patients that have brain aneurysms? Because logically, if you can identify these people ahead of time, then you can really do something to prevent them from rupturing and causing all of the consequences that happen when that occurs.
Well, surely we don't want to alarm anyone, but there's a very good chance that there are people driving to work listening to us right now that may have something brewing that they could be living with for the rest of their lives, and it never, ever affects them. The word aneurysm makes you automatically assume you're done, but that's not the case.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. The best research studies we have estimate that about 3 to 5% of the population has a brain aneurysm. I know Froggy is a big fan of University of Florida football. We were talking about that at the break. If you think about it, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, which is the stadium where the Florida Gators play, has about 90,000 fans in it. If you think 3 to 5%, that means something like 3,000 people in those stands on a home football game on a Saturday have a brain aneurysm. And if you put it in that perspective, it really is a condition that affects many, many people across our country.
So I actually suffer from migraine. So I have a neurologist that I see all the time, and I get MRIs every now and then. Having migraines, do you have a higher risk of having an aneurysm? And should I be getting MRIs more often, to make sure nothing's developing?
No, there's no association between migraine headaches and brain aneurysms, and migraine headaches are so common. So no, in fact, the fact that you have had MRI scans is pretty rare. So I think you can be reassured since you've had imaging that hasn't shown a brain aneurysm.
So, Dr. Ho, is there anything we could be doing to prevent aneurysms, or is it something that it's the way you're wired and you're going to get them? If you're going to get them, you're going to get them. How does it work?
That's a great question. No one really knows what causes brain aneurysms, and that's why I'm doing research in the laboratory to try to understand what causes these and what aneurysms form from. And the only two things that we know are associated with brain aneurysms are cigarette smoking and high blood pressure. There just seems to be a high prevalence of those two risk factors in patients that have brain aneurysms. 1 out of 5 people with a brain aneurysm has another family member with a brain aneurysm. So some brain aneurysms may be hereditary. And we know that people that have a family history for brain aneurysms are at higher risk for them bursting or rupturing. But other than that, we really don't know what causes brain aneurysms. And so there really is a really urgent need to do more research to better understand this disease.
Now, we remember that Froggy was having, he not only having headache problems, but he had blurred vision as well to a certain extent, right, Frog?
Yeah, I was having some of that, and I had some of that before. Remember, I had a brain procedure back in 2010, also at University of Florida with one of Dr. Ho's colleagues, Dr. Stephen Roper, and the blurred vision then was caused by my tumor on my pituitary gland, which was affecting my vision in my right eye. Dr. Ho doesn't believe that the aneurysm was a cause of what I was experiencing this time, but the acromegaly that I have, that disease caused me to go for the MRI scan, which ended up making this scene. So the acromegaly disease, in a roundabout way, ended up doing me a favor because I went for the scan and had the CT angiogram. But I also wanted to mention that I'm going to form an endowment and a foundation with Dr. Ho and the University of Florida, and I'm going to do anything I can and everything I can to raise money for research for aneurysms to find out why these are happening and do what I can to help other people along the way now that I have been lucky enough to have been helped myself.
I have to tell you, we're watching the text messages coming through live as people are listening to us. And the number of people who have experienced aneurysm issues and have had them worked on, or their parents or their family and friends. And this is a huge thing. It's not just every once in a while you hear one guy on the radio that had it. I mean, it's affecting everyone.
Even and it's not just elderly people.
Right. Well, you're not quite elderly. You're not there yet. This text here says that my boyfriend gets severe headaches right after sex. Should he get it checked out? Dr. Ho, could there be a connection between sex and headaches and aneurysm?
No, there isn't a connection between intercourse and aneurysms. A common presentation of brain aneurysm rupture is aneurysm rupture after intercourse, which has led to the common belief, which hasn't been verified by science, but the common belief that straining or exerting yourself can cause an aneurysm to rupture. But there are headaches associated with intercourse that are not related to aneurysm. So good question, but we don't know the answer to that.
Scary, did you have a question?
I did. So what I'm gathering is you can lead a healthy and complete life with an aneurysm, but if it ruptures, that's when there's trouble. And then, so the next question would be, what percent of aneurysms rupture? Do we know?
That's a very good question. So, and that's really the dilemma that we face as physicians and healthcare providers that treat this disease. As I mentioned before, 3 to 5% of the population has a brain aneurysm, but roughly around 30,000 people in the United States have a brain aneurysm rupture each year. So that's a small fraction of the people that have brain aneurysms. And so one of the real challenges or dilemmas we face is we don't really know whose brain aneurysm is going to burst or rupture, and we don't know whose are safe to leave alone and watch. We think that the size of an aneurysm has to do with the risk of rupture. The bigger the aneurysm, the more we worry about it bursting. But you're right. Once it bursts, then it's a real problem. You know, when a brain aneurysm bursts, there is a 50% chance you will die from it. So a 1 in 2 chance that you'll die. 12% of people don't even make it to the hospital. They drop dead suddenly and they don't survive to make it to the hospital. So very, very serious.
You know, I'm also seeing on the text messages, people are a little perplexed because of the need of an endowment that, and more research that Froggy and you guys are talking about. Aneurysms seem to be kind of a mysterious thing. I mean, unless we have a magic wand, we can just wave up and down in front of our head every day that goes, oh, you've got an aneurysm, then we just don't know. So the little signs you can look for, in addition to maybe someone in your family having it, or if you're a smoker, or if you have high blood pressure, is a headache, blurred vision. Is there anything we could be looking for, Dr. Ho?
Yeah, that's a good question. So headache, blurred vision, those things can be associated with brain aneurysms. But the real quandary is so many people have headaches and most people don't have a brain aneurysm. But if you're having severe headaches, obviously any symptom or sign that you're having, you should mention and tell to your primary care physician. Everyone should have a primary care physician, a family practice doctor, and you should see that person for regular checkups. And if you're having headaches or if you're having blurred vision, that's something that you should tell them.
Right. We always say get ahead of it. Don't let it get ahead of you.
Right.
Be proactive and see your doctor. Before we go, Gandhi, I don't know if this is too personal, but I remember you actually DM'd something to Dr. Ho.
I did. So I sent you a message.
You want to talk about it?
I would love to.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw it or not, but I sent you a message on Instagram after all of this happened. And I will never, ever knock the power of prayer and how important positive vibes are and all of that. But I think what's super important is the science and the scientists and the doctors and modern medicine and people like you who have dedicated your life and your youth to studying these things to be able to then implement it and save Froggy's life. And I just think that's so important. And thank you for doing that for all of us.
Thank you so much for saying that. That means the world to me. Thank you.
And there's so many stories in our world today that involve science and scientists.
Mm-hmm.
One of the good things I'm hoping will come out of the pandemic and all we're learning about the pandemic and what started it and what keeps it going, the science, the doctors. I'm hoping that, look, here comes Dr. Oz. How funny is that?
Another one.
Right on cue.
Can you turn Dr. Oz on?
He's on.
Dr. Oz. This is Dr. Brian Ho, who saved Froggy's life and yanked that strawberry of an aneurysm out of his head.
You know, my brother-in-law, Michael Lamole, who knows you, trained
Oh,
in the
yes,
Burroughs.
yes.
And so
yes.
when I got, my usual curbside consultations from Elvis and his friends, I quickly called around. I heard the best things about you. And the most important thing is I was supposed to tell you it was beginner's luck if the case went well.
That's not good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Oz probably doesn't know this, but when I was a medical student at Columbia University in New York City, he was a cardiac surgeon at the time at Columbia. It was before he had gone into TV and has had the career that he has now. But I knew all about Dr. Oz before he became a famous TV personality.
This is so cute.
This is like a really weird moment for us.
This is like the smartest our show has ever and will ever be is right now.
Okay, well, Dr. Ho, we thank you so much not only for saving Froggy and, of course, in getting to the point I was making, Dr. Oz, as you were popping on. From this pandemic, we are learning the importance of science, and I'm hoping one of the good things that comes out of this is more and more kids are watching the news and will decide that science and medicine is the direction they want to discover and investigate for them and their futures. I think that could be a great thing. Dr. Ho, thank you so much for your time today. And thanks for saving our Froggy's life. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
By the way, Dr. Oz just pops in every once in a while. He comes by for a cup of coffee.
Cocktails.
We obviously are running very late here. We have to coordinate this. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a break and we'll be back. Hopefully we can figure this out with Dr. Oz as well. Dr. Ho, you have a beautiful day and happy surgery, okay?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ho, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back after this.
The Mercedes AMG Interview Lounge.